Now, whenever I drained out a cooler on my dry driveway, it would highlight an issue that I had. And that is at this control joint, there has been a crack that's formed, and that's the purpose of the control joint, to allow different parts of the driveway, different concrete pads to shift. But now I've created a trough for water. So water would flow down, it would drain into this crack and just continue to drain. Now this was most visible during dry times, but just think about when it rains. Now your whole driveway or sidewalk is flowing into this crack with nowhere to go. So what that does is over time, it works away at the base underneath your concrete, and that's when we start to promote more shifting, leading to additional cracks, and eventually you're gonna have to replace a portion of your driveway or sidewalk or all of your driveway and sidewalk. So a little maintenance can 2x or 3x the life of your concrete, and let me show you how.
Now for step one, I'm just going to use an old flathead screwdriver and a shop vac, and that's to pull all of the sticks, the dirt, and debris out of this joint and the crack that's formed over time. You want to get all this cleaned out, and this is really part of the prep work, which is going to set you up for success, so do not overlook this step. Now I'll take a nylon cup bristle brush in my cordless drill, and I'll work both sides of this crack. I want to knock off all the dirt and debris to make sure I have a clean surface, because we will be sealing the surface. And the cleaner the surface is, the more the sealant will be able to bond to the surface and stand up for years and years and years. Now you'll take a look and see how large are those voids after you cleaned out the crack. Here mine aren't too bad, so I'm just going to fill those up a little bit with some general purpose sand. If you have large gaps, you might go through multiple bags, but don't fill it all the way to the surface. Only go within about an inch of the surface to make sure you don't fill it too high, because we need to leave room for the backer rod, which is the last step in prep before applying the sealant.
So when it comes to backer rod, I have the small version from MD that's 3/8 of an inch in diameter. And then there's medium, large, usually small, medium, large. You can find it pretty much any home improvement store. Now this is extra large. I found this at my local Menards. This goes up to 3/4 of an inch. Now if you have gaps larger than that, which actually quite often do happen, I'll show you at the end of the video how to accommodate for those larger gaps or even irregular gaps that kind of vary quite a bit in the width that you're going to need to fill. When it comes to selecting your backer rod, you actually want the backer rod diameter to be larger, at least 1/8 of an inch larger than your actual gap. You might need to get a few different sizes. This crack here actually does change in size, so I'll probably have to use my razor blade and cut this in half to get that filled, because you need to fill the entire gap. This is what's going to provide the backing for the sealant, and any holds, any gaps, or if the backer rod is loose, that's going to cause you all sorts of problems when you're applying your sealant. So this is a critical step. If you get this step right, it makes applying the sealant so much easier.
Now I use this flathead screwdriver, but it has a very dull point. You don't want to use anything that's too sharp, or when you press down on the backer rod, it'll just poke right through. So I use that screwdriver to set the backer rod about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch below what I want the top of the sealant to be. And that will result in the best performance. If you go too thin, then your sealant might not be durable and won't hold up for years and years. If you go too thick, it will impact how it sets up in the dry time.
So here's what you need to look out for. The crack actually gets larger than 3/8 of an inch diameter, larger than the backer rod. So I need to actually take this piece out, put in a larger piece of backer rod. If I didn't do that, once I come through here with sealant would find that gap, and then I'd have a low spot in my finished product because it would drain more here compared to the surrounding surfaces because it has that void. So now I'll just go ahead and use a 5/8 of an inch backer rod to fill this void, which is going to ensure we don't have any issues as we come through here with the sealant on the next step.
And then to finish things off, just to make sure you don't have any open ends, I take some Gorilla Tape, which will block off this end, making sure sealant doesn't flow out the end and cause issues.
Now you probably noticed on that end, my one pad is about 5/8 of an inch higher than the other. I'm going to leave that and only fill the sealant up to the lower pad. And I'm going to maintain a little bit higher pad there, not trying to fix that. If you tried to fix that, you'd be trying to grind that surface down and just be a whole different type of project. Now when it comes to sealant, there's two different sealants that I've used over the years and work awesome. The first one is Sika's self-leveling sealant. The self-leveling sealant I used initially on a crack right by my garage door, and 2 years after the initial application, it's still going strong. Now this is only going to work if you have a completely level crack. If you have a slope at all, that's when you cannot use the Sika, and you can go to the Tremco Vulcan 45 SSL. That's a semi self-leveling. So it does level out when you apply it, but it does hold up from pulling to one side if you have a small grade in the crack or small grade in your driveway. If I have to pick one, I usually go with the Tremco. Either one of these and also the nylon cut bristle brush you'll find in a link below the video over in the Amazon store for your reference, whether you get them on Amazon or you just want the exact product reference. These are 29-ounce tubes or any other specifications for your own project. Now I always have either a paper bag from the grocery store or a lawn bag to set the sealant on. So if I need to take a break or any kind of pause, I can set it there without getting sealant on the driveway. And then also know the application temperature from 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is the surface temperature. If it's 80 degrees outside, there's a good chance your surface temperature is higher than that. It was about 80 degrees today, and right now I'm right at about the 100-degree mark. Now it is later in the afternoon, so this temperature is going to continue to go down, and I'm right on the upper edge, but I do feel comfortable, and we'll see if we have any issues. The issues that come up, especially on the hot side, are bubbling of the sealant when it's setting up, and that's no good. You will not get the finished product you're looking for. So I'll lay the sealant down, and then we'll talk about trying to estimate how much you're going to need for your project.
Now this demonstration of applying the sealant is actually at 4 times the real speed. So it's pretty slow going, and I always look a little bit ahead of the actual nozzle to see how much I'm going to need to apply, because it will vary as the crack is not uniform all the way across the length that we'll be applying the sealant. And again, how smooth the application part of this project goes is really established in the prep work that you do. If your back rod is set correctly, there's no holes, then you can pretty easily progress through this section without any problems and getting the finished product that you're looking for. So this is what the Tremco would look like. Again, this is limestone. So it stands out a little bit, but not too bad. What I do to try to help it blend into the existing driveway is I just take that same sand that we were using to fill the voids and I just sprinkle it on top after the sealant has set up for about 5 or 10 minutes.
So the sand really helps it blend in where it's not as visible, and you can kind of vary as much as you need to match your existing concrete. Everything's looking good. I do have a little bit of a low spot here. This is an example on if you have that gap around your backer rod, you'll have the sealant want to set in. Now that's still not a big issue here. It's going to be a watertight seal, but that's just an example why it has to be so tight against the concrete to make sure everything seals up and you don't get a hole. And then depending on which one you went with, Sika or Tremco, it takes about 4 to 5 hours to get the sealant tack free. And then I'd give it a full 24 hours, hopefully before it's raining or you do any cleaning of your driveway, just to let it completely set up. Overall, planning out how many tubes, Sika says you can get 70 linear feet if you only do 1/4 of an inch. I have not found that to be very practical in actual application, probably because you're varying between 1/4 and 1/2, and the crack width is varying as well for most of these projects. So the most I've gotten is probably half of that, 35 feet, but usually it's somewhere in the range of 25 to 35 feet per 29-ounce tube. Now, if you are ordering this online, maybe through our Amazon store, I would get an extra tube. It's a real bummer when you get 80% of the way through your project and you run out and you don't have additional sealant available. You don't want to be in that position. Now, if you have a much wider gap, which I had at one of my rental units, is actually over 1.5 inches wide, and it was gnarly, all sorts of jagged edges. Backer rod is probably not going to do it for you, but you can actually use a pool noodle as backing, a custom fit backing, and do almost the exact same process to seal up that gap. And I've had many people skeptical, but about 1.5 years later, that's still holding up strong. So check out this video right here. I'll walk you through the complete process just in case your application's a little bit less ideal like this one. So thanks for joining me on this video, and we'll catch you on that next one. Take care.